another week, you've got some new work debuting as well.
In less than a week. You'd think that I'd give it a little bit more of a margin, don't you think? But yeah, no, this actually came about because last May, I had been on medical leave for a year, recovering from cancer. And during that time, David Gear gave me a call and asked me if I would consider being on the faculty showcase series. And I hadn't even thought of applying for it just because of my distance from the program.
You had just a few things going on.
I was distracted. And he said, I only have one slot left, but we don't have jazz represented, so I'd really like you to do something on November 1st. And I said, okay, well, I see some people are doing these lecture demonstration kinds of things. Should I do something like that? He said, I don't know. I don't really want people to come out and hear you talk. And I said, well, I don't know. I've done a lot of writing for large ensemble recently, but that's kind of a small space for the large ensemble. So anyway, he said, well, you just keep thinking about it. And the very next month, I read this article in the New Yorker about Zafir Khan. It's a wonderful story about an Afghan immigrant who left home when he was 12 and wandered through India for about 7 years before getting on a boat in Bombay and landing in Seattle. And he just wandered around the West for a while and ended up settling in Sheridan, Wyoming, because a German Jew owned a tamale business there and wanted to get rid of it. And so Zafir Khan just took his name and became known thereafter as Hot Tamale Louie.
And this was like in the teens, early 20s,
right?
And this is 100 years ago.
This is more than 100 years ago. 1907 is when he landed in Seattle. And he finally took over the business in Sheridan in 1909, 2 years later. So anyway, of course, the story itself was fabulous. Catherine Schultz is a Pulitzer Prize winner, and she had written the story. But for me, the musical ideas were just really wonderfully diverse, using maybe some traditional and folk music from Afghanistan and from Persia, and also Western ballads and Mexican waltzes and ragtime and
just kind of all of it in there, isn't it?
It's got a large variety of different mixed in elements that all hold together because of the story. And that's the kind of challenge that I like as a composer, and I just leapt at that opportunity.
And of course, the story is continuing today because his descendants want to build a mosque.
Yeah,
in Wyoming, and there's been some pushback because of today's current political climate.
Right. I'm going to do my level-headed best just to tell Zafir's story. So, there's no doubt there is a current application, though. The people who want to build this mosque are in Gillette, and it's raised a lot of pushback from people who are just not familiar with the long legacy of Zafir Khan and Muslim practice in the state of Wyoming, let alone in the United States. More than 30 of the people who are involved in the founding of this mosque are direct descendants of Zafir Khan.
So lived in this country for over 100 years.
And they've been local sports heroes. They graduated from local high schools. They belong to local civic organizations. They've been servicemen and returned decorated. So, these are people who have not just lived isolated, sequestered lives, but rather have been fully integrated into the culture. In fact, I got to tell you a story. I just had a quick email exchange with my colleague Bob Washut up at UNI. He said, John, I grew up in Sheridan, and I had Louie's hamburgers. They were the absolute best ever. So even, our Iowa jazz connection goes back 50 years to the time when Bob Washut was living in eastern Wyoming, and he was able to sample the wares not only of this great cook but this great philanthropist who helped to dig wells and to found moss, and he would help fiancés put a down payment on a house or to buy rings for each other. He'd send servicemen cash and cigarettes unsolicited from Wyoming. So he just was somebody that invested very deeply and in many cases anonymously in the community, both at home and in Wyoming.
Well, and I think that when you talk about using music to influence society or influence change, it's done best when it's done organically through sharing stories like this instead of kind of wielding lyrics like a sledgehammer to try and convert somebody to your point of view.
I'm hoping to be. My best effort will be evocative, not didactic.
Well, it sounds like a blast, and what a fun challenge for you as a composer to have an opportunity to bring, like you said, all of those diverse styles of music together very organically into one thing.
And, I'm lucky in a couple of ways, one of which is living 3 blocks away from Dave Moore, the great Iowa City folk singer. We've been talking about trying to do a project together, and there's no better person to help me represent the Western element of this. He's going to play accordion and harmonica and slide guitar, and he's going to sing the ballad of Hot Tamale Louie that I wrote. And then in tandem with a new immigrant to Iowa City, his name is Daniel Gaglione. He is from southern France, but his in-laws are from Iowa City, and he and his wife, just within this last year, have decided to move their family and become immigrants in the United States. He plays the North African mandol, is familiar with many different Middle Eastern modes and compositional styles, was a popular musician in France for a number of years. So I have those 2 elements that are going to help me represent some pretty significant sides of the story, and then tied together by 5 alumni musicians, 5 students that I all had in my classroom who are now out in the professional world.
And let me see, I've got that list here of the people that we know well: Ryan Smith, Tara Dutcher, Dan Padley, Blake Shaw, Justin LeDuc.
Yep.
Always, they're out playing all the time.
And they are such fine musicians and such creative musicians. They're all working to develop something that has a unique expression in the music that they do, and they're fine craftsmen on their instruments. And I can't tell you, but I'm busting my buttons to, have these students who all sat in my classroom at one juncture or another playing together with me.
Well, it is a full week of great music in the brand new Voxman Hall. So if you haven't had a chance to see that, this would be the perfect time to do it. And the events are all free, correct?
They're all free. We will hasten to tell you that there have been large crowds that have been coming so far to the orchestra and to the faculty showcase events. So recommend that you come a little early so that you can claim a seat.
Because it is first come, first serve.
It is first come, first serve, and no tickets for the event.
And the premiere of Tamale Louie coming up on, is it Tuesday? Tuesday the 1st.
November 1st, 7 days in front of the election.
Okay. John, thanks so much for coming in.
I was so grateful to have the opportunity. Thanks.